What's up, Kings fans? Welcome back to another Royal Rebounds Podcast with Calvin and Barry. I am so happy, Calvin, that you are back. But in the meantime, we're here, we're drinking beers, and we're talking about your Sacramento Kings. Calvin, what are we drinking today?
Knee Deep Brewing Company's Breaking Bud. Really cool bottle here. A little play on words with the Breaking Bad television show. Delicious IPA.
It is delicious. I want to remind you all, please subscribe to the channel. Please like this video and hit those notification bells if you want to get future notifications when we put out new content. We really appreciate it. We do it for you guys, and we're happy to have you here. So, jumping right into today's show, we are going to be talking about the Sacramento Kings depth chart. I know we've been talking the past couple weeks about log jams all over the place, big, smalls. Calvin, you want to dive in here?
Yeah, well, I think the key word here is depth in depth chart, right? Because suddenly the Kings have a ton of it all around. You know, when Davion Mitchell was drafted, it kind of left us all wondering where the Kings were going to go next in terms of their guard depth. They traded DeLon Wright, which opens up more playing time for Davion Mitchell. You know, I think the Kings have really put together a very good roster here going into the regular season. Not only did they bring back all of their core players from the last couple of years who have now gotten some good run together, they've added through the draft with Tyrese Haliburton, Davion Mitchell, even Nemius, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right, Keta or not. You know, I think he's got a lot of potential. He's still a very raw basketball player, in my opinion,
surprise.
But has really looked good in Summer League. So I think there is a position for him, you know, down the road. I'm not sure how many minutes he's going to get in this year. Probably a two-way contract would be my guess right now. But they added Tristan Thompson. They have depth at pretty much every position now. And for me, really the only question is Buddy Hield going to start, and is Marvin Bagley going to start? Outside of that, I think they're pretty much set in terms of 1 and 2 at each position.
First off, looking here, I see a ton of guys returning, which is great. Guys that maybe weren't on the team last year, but were on the year before, and they're kind of coming back to make another run, which is kind of cool. Unfortunately, there's no Kyle Guy out there. I enjoyed watching him. He did have a game winner last year, and he's now on the Warriors Summer League roster, so we'll see what happens to him. Good to see Metu back. Lewis King, that guy, lit it up in a couple games last year. So,
and Jamias Ramsey has played very well in the Summer League too. So the Kings have a lot of questions to answer here in terms of who's going to get minutes, but having that many guys in the rotation, that many guys who you think you can trust, is not a bad problem to have.
Yeah, and I'm looking here at the ESPN official depth chart, and he is number 5th for point guard and shooting guard. So when's he even going to get some running time, which is crazy here. But you're right. Depth is very important. We talked about last year the Kings struggling on the defensive end of the floor, also just struggling when the starters came off or finding some consistency. And so having all these guys, having this depth, really allows them to play deeper, especially during this. Unfortunately, we're going into another pandemic season, which could have guys miss time and injuries and all that stuff happens too. So I'm not sure if we'll see all these guys on the starting day roster, but as of right now, it's cool to see them kind of packing the bench a little bit.
For sure. Well, they don't have enough spots to have all these guys on the opening day roster. Some of them are going to have to be on the G League team, two-way contract, that sort of thing. But another thing that I notice about this roster is, first of all, there are 5 guys on it, age 28 or older, but the oldest player on the team, do you know who that is, by the way?
I would say Harrison Barnes.
It's close. Tristan Thompson is the only player on the roster who's in his 30s, and he is 30. So they have nobody over the age of 30 on this team. They still have a good mix of veterans. To think Harrison Barnes is only 29. He's won an NBA title. He's been in the league for a long time. Tristan Thompson is only 30. I thought he was older than that.
Won an NBA
title, has been in the league a long time. Even De'Aaron Fox, only 23, but he's been in the league 5 years already. So they're young, but they also have a bit of experience on this team as well, which is great.
Yeah, it really is. And I am very happy to see a guy like Tristan Thompson on this team. I think he brings a lot of defense, and he is just a big body that can, I don't want to say this in a bad way, get his fouls. But that's kind of what his position is sometimes, is he just needs to go in there, be a defensive force and get physical with guys. Use his body, move people around, pick up fouls so that Richaun Holmes and Marvin Bagley or whoever's starting at the 4 doesn't have to.
That's right. You get 6 of them. They don't carry over to the next game. So
Exactly. So, Calvin, would you say that you would anticipate any big moves happening or any shakeup of this depth chart so far? And do you want to do a quick rundown on starters and second team?
I don't foresee any big moves being made before the start of the season. You and your guest host from last episode, who did a great job, by the way. My seat's feeling kind of hot. You guys talked about the Ben Simmons and Pascal Siakam trades looking like they're starting to fall apart. Who knows what's going to happen with either one of those guys. Those would be, in terms of a major move, the only possible things that I could foresee happening with this team. But who knows? Maybe Monty has got something up his sleeve that he's kept well hidden, and we'll find out about it. But I certainly don't expect anything. In terms of starting lineups, it's really interesting. Like I said before, is Buddy Hield going to start, and is Marvin Bagley going to start? I would expect Bagley to start at this point. I definitely wouldn't play Tristan Thompson and Richaun Holmes together in the starting lineup. Outside of that, I don't know who you would necessarily start at power forward. Maybe Metu. I think Marvin's probably got to get the nod over him, at least for now. Buddy Hield, to me, is a really interesting one because obviously you want Tyrese Haliburton on the court as much as possible. So can you convince Buddy Hield to be the sixth man, come off the bench, lead that team? You're going to play alongside Davion Mitchell, who is what a lot of people are starting to think of as a starting caliber point guard in his own right. So that makes your bench pretty formidable either way, whether Haliburton or Hield comes off the bench. I don't know what the best fit for them is necessarily. I would like to see De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Haliburton play as much as possible. Buddy Hield, to me, is a really big question mark. I don't know what that's going to do to his mental state. We already know he had some issues with playing time and coming off the bench for this team in the past. So what is that going to look like if he's asked to come off the bench this time around?
The Marvin Bagley situation is much more clear. His last year, you got to try and salvage some value. He's making a good chunk of money. You got to figure out whether this is the guy you're going with or whether you might not even offer that qualifying offer.
And he's got a lot to prove. Contract year.
Yep.
He's got to prove that he's somewhat keeping up with the rest of that draft class, which is running away from him right now.
Yeah, he just saw Doncic sign a $200 million contract. He just saw Trae Young sign a huge contract. What about JJ from the Grizzlies? Has he signed an extension yet? Or
I don't know about that. Let's do some fact. You keep going.
John Collins did. Just sign one too. So
he did.
Yeah, keeping up with the rest of that draft class is the last thing he needs to worry about. He needs to worry about staying healthy, staying on the court. It'll be interesting to see what happens in that power forward position because I could see Tristan Thompson getting some time at the 4. And if they don't feel that Holmes and Thompson fit together, then maybe Marvin will be playing a little bit more 5. We talked about this a few weeks ago. But Tristan Thompson, Marvin Bagley, 4-5 is not a bad thing.
No, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. And with the moves that they've made in the offseason, focusing more on defense and on rebounding, which are two of their biggest flaws, I think you can afford to take a chance and play Marvin at the 5 a little bit.
Who do you guys think will be starting at the 5 next season? Let us know down below in the comments.
So real quick, Jaren Jackson Jr. entering the last year of his rookie deal, it looks like. So he has not re-signed.
Okay, that'll be interesting. Yet. That'll be interesting there too.
He's owed $9 million this year.
All right, so looking at this depth chart, the only logical question to ask after that is this team making the playoffs?
It's too early to tell for me. I will say this. They have, in my opinion, a better chance to make the playoffs this year than they did last year. And I thought all things considered with what happened throughout the course of last year's season, worst defense in NBA history. De'Aaron Fox misses 10 or more games at the end of the year. Rashawn Holmes was out at the end of the year. They still managed to string together some wins, and they only missed the play-in tournament by like 2 or 3 games. All that considered, they still almost made the playoffs last year. This team has just as good, if not a better chance to make the playoffs this year. But we got to wait and see how it turns out. It's a long season.
Do you know what the definition of insanity is?
I believe it's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Yes, and I see how many Kings fans probably feel like this is insanity and we're just rolling the same starting lineup out there again as last year and nothing can happen. And that's a very valid concern. But also you have to think that this team is young. They're getting better. It's another year under Coach Walton, so more consistency kind of growing there. They drafted some good players to add along. And sometimes it's not always addition by addition.
Right.
There's addition by subtraction on your own team. And then there's also subtraction off of other teams around you, right? Yes. As in your team stays the same, but others get worse.
Yes.
So, on that subject, I think we should take a look at last year's standings. Do you want to start at the top or the bottom?
Let's start at the bottom, because we'll get to the Kings faster that way.
Okay. So, right off the top, or the top of the bottom here, we have the Rockets and the Thunder. I think we can both agree that neither of those teams improved.
I will disagree with you, actually. I think the Rockets actually did improve.
I think
Jalen Green might be Rookie of the Year this year.
They added some young talent. They are going to be healthier with Christian Wood coming back.
And let's just be clear. They won how many games last year? 17?
17 games.
Hard to do worse than that. So I'm going to go with they are a little bit better this year.
There are a little bit more games this year as well. So, yeah, more opportunities. But I'm just saying as far as expectations for next year,
yeah,
I think they're probably going to be those two teams are probably going to be close to the bottom again. I don't think either of them are leapfrogging the Kings or have leapfrogged the Kings with their
I would not
off-season.
expect that to happen, no.
Above that, we have the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Yeah.
Who knows what to expect from them? They have 3 great players. They keep drafting
They're
another
the best,
good guy.
Worst team ever.
Yeah, they keep drafting another good guy every year. Yeah. I think their major question is who's going to play that 4 position next to Towns, right?
Yeah. And health, too.
Yes.
They've had some injury issues.
So I think we can both agree that the Kings are still a step above Minnesota?
I would agree.
Okay. And then, oh, wow, the next team is the Kings. Well, I guess you could say the Kings and the Pelicans.
Yeah,
they're swapped there. How are you feeling about New Orleans' odds next year? Have they gotten better?
I love their first-round draft pick. They traded back. They did have the 10th pick, and they traded with Memphis. Moved all the way back to 17, and they got Trey Murphy out of Virginia, who is lighting it up in the Summer League right now. He is a knockdown shooter, really good defender. I love his fit on their team. They're a big question mark to me. I don't know. They got Valanciunas now, another guy that I really like. So to me, it's all about point guard for them. Who's going to step into that role? If they can get some really consistent point guard play, hard to argue with that roster. Zion and Brandon Ingram together again, another year. I expect both of them to be improving. There's a lot to like with them. I just don't know if they're going to put it together or not.
Yeah, I agree. I feel they lost Lonzo Ball. Didn't really get much value from that. They lost Steven Adams. I know they got another center in return. And then they also lost Drew Holiday. That's 3 big pieces in a really short time span. So I kind of see them sitting put. I know they're trying to do some things to appease Zion and get him to stay because they're afraid he could potentially leave. But I don't really see many big moves that they've made. So let's keep moving. Next, we have the Spurs. Spurs won 33 games last year, just 2 more than the Kings. There was a battle for that last spot there to get into the play-in.
Yep.
They've taken a huge step backwards.
From a personnel standpoint, yes.
For win now personnel standpoint. No more DeRozan. He's in Chicago now.
Yep.
I know they lost Aldridge last year, so he's obviously not back. They did draft some young players. They got a ton of young players on that squad, actually.
They do. They're a very young team.
Where do you project them at the end of the year next year in the standings?
I wouldn't expect them to be a playoff team next year. I think they lost too much. They're in a rebuilding phase. I would never count out Coach Pop for too long. I think he'll get these guys going or get them to be better midway through the season or 3/4 of the way through the season than they were to start. But I think it's going to be a bit of a hole for them to climb out of to get back into that 9, 10, 8 playoff play-in tournament range.
Yes. And so after that, you have the Warriors at 9. And I think we both agree the Warriors have a lot more talent than the Kings. If they can stay healthy,
yes,
they're a better team than the Kings. So that leaves 8 spots in the playoffs, plus the play-in tournament, but really 8 spots that actually make the playoffs, and 10 teams.
Yeah.
So Jazz, number 1 last year in the Suns, they're not getting any worse. Nuggets, Clippers are both going to be in the playoffs.
Injuries are key to watch with both of those teams, though. They're probably not going to have Jamal Murray for the whole year. Probably not going to have Kawhi for most of the year, if not all of it. So do I expect both those teams to be playoff teams still? Yes. But I would expect them to fall a little bit in the standings for those reasons.
They are both pretty deep as well, especially the Nuggets.
Yes.
Trailblazers, they seem to have taken a step back, or they just haven't really done much to improve, right?
Yeah, it feels like they've just hit the wall big time. And, they're bringing back most of their guys, so they still have a very talented roster. New head coach also, something to keep an eye on.
Mavericks, they...
Again, new head coach.
Yeah, new head coach, Jason Kidd. I know he's been getting blasted this last week.
He has been taking a lot of heat.
By everybody, including, I think, his son, too, right?
Yeah.
Crazy. But they haven't really done much either. They re-signed Hardaway.
They did.
I think they brought in J.J. Redick.
Yep.
Other than that, looks like pretty much the same team to me.
Yeah.
They do need to get healthy. They did have some injuries last year. Maybe Porzingis can finally hold it together.
Yeah.
They do have a lot of potential. Then you got the Lakers. I think we both agree they've gotten much better. I don't know how, considering last offseason.
You say that every year about the Lakers. Yeah. Oh, they've gotten so much better.
And then you have Memphis, who
I also think is going to be better. Not necessarily because they added a bunch of pieces, but this was the youngest team in the league last year. They might still be the youngest team in the league, and they made the playoffs. And I think John Morant's going to be better. Jaren Jackson Jr. hopefully is going to play most of the season. He sat out a lot of games last year. They're a very good team. Brandon Clark, Zaire Williams now.
Yep, great squad. So that's 10 teams fighting for 8 spots. And it's going to be a fun one. If I were to ask you at the start of the season, Calvin, if the roster stayed exactly the same, are the Kings making the playoffs? Would you put any money on it in Vegas?
I would put money on the Kings to do no worse than the play-in tournament.
No worse than the play-in tournament.
Yeah.
So they need to make the tournament at least.
Yes.
Okay, that's a great answer.
As long as you get into the tournament, you got a chance. So
I like that too. Make sure you guys let us know down below whether you think the Kings will be making the playoffs this offseason. And maybe give us a percentage. What chance you think they are to making the playoffs? I think it's 100%, and you can write that down.
Look it.
Anything else you want to say before we wrap this thing up?
Glad to be back. I did not have COVID. If anybody out there is worried or wondering, we're okay, even though I think we're 6 feet apart. But I tested negative, so we're all good.
We're all in the clear. All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us on another episode of the Royal Rebounds Podcast. Happy to have you all here. Make sure you all hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. You can visit us on Instagram at Royal Rebounds. You can visit us on royalrebounds.com. Check out the shop. Thank you all.
Follow us on Twitter.
Yeah, follow us on Twitter. Thank you guys. We'll see you next time. And in the meantime, go Kings.
Go Kings.